No idea what happened there, folks. Thank you for joining us. My last live just cut out. So, hoping y'all come back to this one. Hi, friends. Okay, let's see if this is better. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, are
Is
we
that
back?
better? Yeah, I can hear you. You
What?
cannot hear me.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't know what happened there.
I don't know. Come on,
You know,
interwebs.
you know what? Get out of here, devil. You a
Come
lie.
on,
Okay, get out of
interwebs.
here.
Don't play
Stop
today,
playing.
okay?
Mercury, always retrograding, messing everybody up. All right,
It's Mercury in retrograde, you know.
we gonna
Um,
hop back into this because
okay, here we
we
go.
were talking about parental biases and
Yes,
how they play a part in raising anti-racist children.
hmm yes,
And you were expounding on that.
yes.
I just want to say real quick, I like that you said that our biases lead us to believe that our children cannot handle certain conversations.
hmm
Can you talk about that more?
Yes. So for example, what we think about children, right? One of the big biases, especially that's sort of getting dispelled right now, is children don't see color or they don't notice differences in people. And
Hmm.
that, I mean, anybody who's been around kids absolutely knows that's false. Like kids ask questions all the time. Kids
Right.
are actually so bright and brilliant, though, that they learn very quickly which conversations their parents will and won't have with them.
Hmm.
So when they start asking questions and noticing difference, and parents are like, shh, 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 no, 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 not right now. They're smart. They say, oh, these are conversations that I'm not allowed to have. These are questions that I'm not allowed to get answered. And
Hmm.
then what we do is we suppress those questions and those wanting that desire to want to learn and that inquisitiveness, and then we say our kids don't notice, right?
Right. When really they just got shut down, so they stopped asking.
They
Yeah.
literally got shut down. And I was reading from one researcher, and she actually talked about it. She said her son overheard her son talking to his friends, and he said he was talking about their differences. He was like, oh, I'm white and you're brown, and he was like, shh, 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 the grown-ups don't like us to talk about this.
Mm.
And that was from overhearing it. So he was in preschool and had already received a ton of messages that talking about differences, that asking questions about different people was somehow wrong. And so
Right.
our bias against children, and that's really our own shame, right? That's our own shame that we project on them, our own ignorance, our own biases,
Guilt. Yep.
right? And they're trying to figure it out, and then they say, well, I'm not going to figure it out, they're not going to tell me. And
Well,
then
they
what
figure it
they do,
out. They just form their own, just like with everybody, everything else. They end up forming their own opinions based on what they see around them, based on
exactly,
how what they overhear, based on the media that they consume. And so when we're talking about if we don't have these conversations and our kids figure it out, what are they going to see? They're going to see mostly white people in the media. They're going to
yes,
see mostly white people in, on cartoons and on magazines
yes,
and if you only have books in your house that only feature white characters or male characters, they're gonna start picking up on these patterns, right? What's
absolutely,
important, whose story is important, and they're gonna start forming ideas about supremacy.
absolutely. And these two researchers, Nicole Martins and I think what's the name, Kristen Harris, they did a study about, like, a long-term study about 400 kids, and they showed that, like, increased screen time for white males, for white boys, it increased their self-esteem. But for everyone else, it lowered it. White
Listen.
girls, black boys, black girls, especially we know about this with marginalized genders in perceptions of body and beauty, and because of sexism and patriarchy, right? Girls are even more sort of under, marginalized genders are even more under the microscope and the magnifying
Yeah.
glass, if you will, of what is acceptable and what is not. But when you think about it, like in any media, even if you see characters of color, they're not represented in the same way that white males are represented, right? I love, like, I mean, all of the like Marvel comics
Yeah.
and those movies. Who's that main character hero? It's largely a white male. So when
Right.
you go to the movies and you watch Thor and you watch all these things and you're a white boy, you're like, ooh, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
superhero. I'm the one, right? And everyone else has this sort of marginal role and even oftentimes a negative one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about that for Black and brown parents, and many of you need to think about this too, that is compounded with your kids' intersections, right? So if you have a Black disabled kid or you have a Black queer kid, then the media representation is this big,
Mm-hmm.
this big. And they think they just did a study for last year and they said they didn't have any Black woman disabled leads in film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So,
that those are the messages that our kids are receiving, and they're really explicit. They're
yeah.
really
They're
explicit.
so explicit, and then we're not doing our jobs with countering these messages
Yes.
by being willing to have these conversations because we are saying, no, they're too young. I want to keep them kids
Yes.
as much as
I want to keep
possible,
them
as long as
innocent.
yeah, I want to keep
Innocent.
them innocent. Even Black parents, because
Even Black
our
parents.
fear is that we don't want to put the pressures of the world on them. They're too young. We want them to be free and liberated. But part of liberation is knowledge, you know,
Absolutely.
and
And
so
I
it
hear
does
that from
not
Black
serve
parents.
them. Yes, it does not serve them for us to be afraid to have these conversations. It doesn't serve our kids. And for white parents, it really is countering the same messages in a completely different way that says, okay, well, do you notice a pattern with all of these superheroes? What do you notice about them?
Mm-hmm.
Like what do you see? What do they all have in common?
Yeah.
And countering that message, because again, like Janelle said, especially with white boys, they're getting the message that they can do all, be all, and
Yes.
are all, and then they walk out into the world perpetuating that idea onto other
Yeah.
people on the
Yeah.
playgrounds and everything else.
Yes. And then when they're not all, right? When they're not all, when they fall short of this like superior image that they've been fed, then it's everybody else's fault, right?
Yeah.
Then it's violence in schools, then it's mass shootings. It's that sense of entitlement that
Mm-hmm.
comes with it, right? That superiority comes with that sense of entitlement. So when they don't get all the things that they want and they're not
Right.
the superhero of the story, which legitimately, like, not everybody's a superhero of every, right? Like, you're not supposed to be
Right.
a superhero of every story. So then they're violent. Then they're
Right.
violent.
This is so good because thinking about how parental biases play a part in raising anti-racist children, I don't think anybody's really like dug in deeply into that. So many of us don't even take the time to figure out, like, what did I learn about children?
Mm-hmm.
Where did I look, like, what messages was I fed as a child about children? Because I know for me, I didn't even want kids because I thought kids were just like the worst.
Right.
Like you couldn't have convinced. I didn't like children. I didn't want them around me. I didn't want to talk to them. Don't invite me to a birthday party. I'm not coming.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't really want to go I don't want to go now, but still, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't want children because I felt like children were a nuisance because that's how I was treated.
Yes.
And so the way I started to view children is they should be seen, not heard. Why are you talking? Why are you around me? And that sort of children, now that I've had one, and I've dug into this work, I see how just detrimental that way of thinking. I mean, I wanted to like move to a place where there were literally no children. I
Right.
dreamed of this place.
Yeah.
And I flew there on an airplane where there was no children either. They
Wow.
had their own compartment. Like I just
Right.
really I couldn't stand them. And so having this complete 360 is confusing for people who know me, but I'm so happy I did because children make the world a better place.
They do.
Me seeing how children see the world makes me a better person, a better parent.
Absolutely.
But it took me a while to understand, like, what those ideas about children, how they impacted how I parent my daughter, because it still
Yeah.
shows up. How I parent her, how I teach her things, the way that she's going to end up viewing the world. I
Hmm.
have to really be intentional because I was fed these negative messages, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And children are like some of the safest people on the planet when you think
Hmm.
about it. Like they're the people who literally cause the least amount of damage and
Yeah,
harm to others. They don't have the power in their like social group to cause major damage and harm, right?
right,
They harm each other in small ways, but they don't harm people outside of their community like the rest of us have the power to do. And I have these real like candid conversations with my daughters about sort of this like hierarchy of safety
yeah,
and like who's safest and who's not, and not in like a you can know how people are by how they look, but just with the track record of groups and the
please,
harm that they have done. And I told my girls, like, when you think about males, they've done a lot of harm and damage in the world, grown adult people. And then I'm like, if you combine that with their being cisgender and hetero, that group has done just massive amounts of damage to the world, right? And
right,
that's not an individual thing, that's factual, right? Like
yeah,
we can look over the years of history and see what those groups have done to other communities. And then I say, like, adults, right? I'm part of that group. We're harmful too. We hit kids, we abuse kids, we silence kids, we neglect kids. Kids don't do that to us. They don't do that to
yes,
other people. So it's interesting that we have this negative, and you're not the only one. There's tons of people out there. Like, I mean,
yeah.
a lot of people, especially who don't have kids now, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, kids are the worst." Da, da, da. And I'm like, think about that when you think about society and what causes and who causes harm. The groups that we've outcasted the most have caused the least amount of harm.
Mm. And that's part of the system. That is part of the
Yeah.
feedback loop of these systems because you have to point the finger
Yes.
in the wrong direction. You know what I'm saying? We can't have it pointing in the right to the right
Right.
people
We can't.
because then we would all be doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and you're right, Erica. Keeping critical race theory out of schools will only set us back. And that conversation is a
Yeah,
whole other set of
that's a whole nother
that's a
conversation.
whole other live, y'all, because that is so intentional. It's the same shit they was doing back in the day. Like
Yeah.
all of the stuff that's happening now has been done before, and it
Yeah.
will not hamper progress. Period. They
Yeah.
think it is. It's not. It will not hamper our progress, just like it didn't back in the day when they were trying to keep kids out of, from being segregated, which I think I'm not even going there.
Right.
But
There
but
was
it
some
won't. It
downsides
won't.
to integration. Yes.
Yes, listen.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
but that goes into another thing though. If they're keeping this stuff out of schools, again, it's part of the schools. Schools should be teaching this, but parents,
Yeah.
we are responsible. We are their first teachers. We cannot leave this type of education up to a public school system that is oppressive.
Yeah.
It is made to be oppressive. It is made to churn out factory workers. It is made to be to for kids to conform, to just grow up, get jobs, be invested in capitalism, in white supremacy, and then die. Like that's
Yeah.
literally what
Yeah.
it was created for. So to me, it doesn't make sense for parents to think that they're going to even teach it properly. They never have before.
Mm-hmm.
They never have before. They've never taught um, anything of like. Think about all the stuff people are just realizing. What
Right.
Juneteenth is.
Yeah.
What the Tulsa massacre.
Yeah.
People are just finding out about these things because we're so
2021.
loud and vocal because of social
Mm-hmm.
media. So they've never taught it. So it's up to us to teach it, especially Black and brown parents. It is up to us to teach our children this history. And for white parents, it is up to you to do this research and find out this history and to teach it at home. These
Mm-hmm.
schools are not made to teach it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not even worried about this conversation, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And that too, though, to say that in a real way, that also comes from a place of privilege, right? Where we have access, time, and ability to spend with our kids. We have kids in schools who are in foster care systems, who are unhoused,
This is
who
true.
don't
Yes.
have the care that we can offer to our children. So I am absolutely in agreement with you that parents and caretakers have a huge responsibility
Yeah.
in getting this information out. But I am wanting the schools and I'm pushing educators to do that, because not every kid has an opportunity to have a parent at home who's kind, who's supportive, who's going to do that. And if they're with you, then you have a responsibility to do it. So I tell early educators that. I tell, I really, that's a lot of the work that I do, is working with educators to get this
Yeah.
information to students in mass settings. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be ideal right now, but yes, push your schools, like, and advocate for your schools.
Oh, yeah.
If you,
You
yeah,
still got to advocate for
absolutely,
schools.
right? Because
You
there
do.
are kids who are not going to get it. And like you said, white parents need to be educated, Black parents need to be educated on it. I have so many conversations with Black parents, and I'll be sharing things, and they literally have like, are just blown away by the things that I'm sharing as well, because we did not get this in the institutions that we went to.
No.
And that means college, that means PhDs. A lot of this
Yeah.
information was not given in any of these institutions. There was a reason for it. It was purposeful. And so you have to really, really dig into listening to people who are invested in this information, listening to now they're just educators, right? Like online,
Yeah.
a lot of people are sharing their histories, their family histories. I follow a lot of Indigenous folks, and they have ancestors who were in, some of these massacres and
Yeah.
riots and all that stuff, and they're passing down the stories.
Right.
They're passing down the stories that aren't in the history books, that don't fall under manifest destiny.
Mm.
So, like, it's super important right now to pay attention to marginalized groups and members of the community who are trying to get this information out.
Yeah.
And so for Black and brown parents, if you're on here, like, you have to spend some time investing yourself in it. And I know it's an emotional toll, right? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that it's easy. I absolutely understand that it comes with some emotional hardship, because it's unfortunate that we have to think about the history, especially Black people and Indigenous people in this country, 400, 500 years of oppression, right? And you absolutely can balance that out with so many triumphant stories.
Oh,
And I
yeah. So
like to
much
share
joy.
this story, right? Like, I was so intentional with my girls, um, when they were like, as soon as they could start talking, right? I was very explicit about color, race. I mean, I would even go through some of their books sometimes that were not diverse, and I would color the people brown. Like, I would go through and color some of the people brown with color pencils, right? And people
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, she's so extra. And I was like, no,
Nope.
nope, nope. And I
Negative.
remember when my girls were little and they were drawing themselves, they would say, oh, mom, I cannot draw myself. I do not have a brown crown. I would be
Yeah.
running around the house looking for that crown. And I was so intentional about showing them positive images of
Yes.
Black and brown people every day, all the time. And it got to the point when my daughter was like, I want to say she was like 4, right? And she's in the back of the car. We driving down the street, and she's like, Mom, are there any bad brown people? And I was like, what do you mean, honey? And she was like, like brown people who do bad things. And I was like, yeah, there's people who look like everyone. Every group has people who do bad things. And she was like, I don't know any.
Yeah.
And that was intentional
Yes.
and consistent effort to make sure that she saw herself and people who look like her as positive, as innovative, as creative, as compassionate, right? And
Yes.
not just this. I'm even straying away from this too. Not just this Black excellence thing that we're so attached to, where we're like, look at these elite Black people. I'm talking
Yes.
about farmers. I'm talking about sharecroppers. I'm talking about enslaved ancestors. She looked at them and said, these are my people, and they have overcome, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to sell your kids kings and queens all the time to get them to have pride in themselves.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, girl, I got chills down the spine, and they're multiplying. That just happened. You are my Shira right now. Like I'm totally doing that, but I need to incorporate the what you're saying, like the sharecroppers. Like I
Yeah.
just watched High on the Hog the other night,
Mhm.
and as I through my tears, I felt so much pride though. I felt so much just like, man, I wanna carry on this legacy of like farming, of like being
Yes.
a community builder, of being an innovator. That's what I saw when I got out, when I
Yes.
finished that. And I want her to feel that same sort of pride in the ancestors, because this whole, I am not my ancestors, I'm gonna fight
Oh,
back. They fought back.
like what?
Resistance from the time that they were shackled, from the time they, what I'm saying, resisted. I'm not
It's
sure where
so,
this whole docile shit came from, where it was like we just sat back and let shit happen to us. That is not the truth.
it's
And
not
I
the
want her to
truth.
know you come from a legacy of people who fight,
A
who fight,
legacy of
and
resistors
who win.
and who
Because the bitch
win.
is winning over
Yes.
here.
Yes. Come
You
to the
know what I'm
farm,
saying?
right? Yes.
I'm winning. So it's just
Yes.
like you come. This is in your blood, and I want you to be proud of that. Now I'm very intentional about the toys.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, somebody, I don't know where this book came from, but it was some book about police, girl. That thing went straight in the trash.
Right.
But I don't even donate those.
No.
Nobody's getting
Right.
this one.
Nobody gets
But
that.
but all the books, all the dolls, all the art. I have a very Afrocentric house. All the art. I have old newspapers from the Black Panthers that I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be framing. Like all of these really powerful things. So she could just look around and just be like, "Damn,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
black. We
Black.
black up in
Right.
here, and we're loving every single moment of it." And I think that's so important because they will be inundated with just
Every day. Every
every
day in the
day in
media.
very insidious ways
Mm-hmm.
inundated with anti-blackness.
Every day.
So it's very intentional that we have to do this work.
And you have to be like, I'm encouraging folks, and this is something I'll be expounding upon in my workshop, is being explicit in these conversations, and not just sort of like, oh, like I have the images, I have the books. Like when I talk to my kids, I'll be like, "Ooh, look at her skin, it's just like yours. Ooh, look at her hair, it's just like yours." I'm
Yeah,
very, very explicit in like, this person is like you, right? If with kinky hair, with brown skin, and I'll say, "Oh wow, look at her brown skin. It's just like
yeah,
yours," right? Because sometimes the we're really fighting an uphill battle, and if you're sort of subtle with the messages, then the overwhelming message is still
yeah.
anti-blackness. It's still
Right,
anti-blackness. It's still anti-indigenous, right?
right.
So being intentional about that. And I check in with my kids. Like that's parents too. We're so scared of the answers a lot of the times that we're going to get from our kids that we don't
Mm,
ask them hard questions. And I like share about this from my own experience. So my family, I feel like I was the first generation to be integrated in schools in my family. I come on my dad's side of the family, I come from a lineage of people who toiled this land, of sharecroppers. I'm actually, me and my brother are the first people in that lineage who have never picked cotton on this
mm,
land, right? And
okay.
that, y'all, I was born in the 80s. Hear me. I was born in the 80s.
It's not
And
ancient history. Yeah.
right? And I was the first generation in that lineage to not toil this ground as a sharecropper or being enslaved. Now, so my parents, like I live with my mom. Yeah, it was yesterday. And I see a lot of indigenous folks talk about they're the first people who haven't been to boarding school, right? Like this is our generation, right? Um, so my parents were like, my mom and my stepdad, they were like really conservative. I grew up in this really conservative household, y'all. They're like Rush Limbaugh listeners. It's really strange how I grew up, but no, every day listen to Rush Limbaugh. Um, so they wanted to do the whole like colorblind thing. the post-racial thing. They integrated us into these all-white great schools, right? Even though they had both grew up in schools that were diverse with teachers who looked like them. I never had teachers who looked like me. I never had a Black woman teacher in my entire life, right? And all of my education. And that was why I was also very intentional about homeschooling my kids. I do a homeschool hybrid. So I was like, they going to have a Black teacher and it's going to be me, right? It's going to be a Black femme teacher and it's going to be me. But my parents put us in these white schools after we lived in some diverse areas at first, right? And then we went to these white schools and they never had a conversation with us about the differences that it was going to be for us when we went to these white schools. They didn't talk about how we were going to be discriminated against.
Yeah.
They didn't tell us that people were going to not find us attractive. They didn't, like, I very early on knew, like, oh, I'm Black. That means that people are not going to find me attractive. I didn't go to prom. And I saw it. I was in 7th or 8th grade and I said, oh, Mom, I'm not going to prom if we stay here. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, nobody's going to ask me to prom. Like, yeah, I know, like, these are facts. Senior year, junior year came and went. There was no prom. And I was aware of it, like, it's just because I'm Black, right? But it took some time to get there, right? And so now, like, we live in a part of LA that's not really diverse because it's close to, like, work, right? But I'm very, very intentional with my kids. I talk to my daughter about it all the time. I was like, look, I know these little boys at your school probably don't like you, or these little girls at your school probably don't like you. They don't have crushes on you or whatever. And I was like, let me tell you something, you a bad one. Okay. And I was like, and it's just because they don't like Black people. That's it. It don't have nothing to do with your beauty. It doesn't have anything to do with your intelligence, your compassion, or anything like that. And I was like, and when you get around some Black people, I explicitly tell them that. Yeah. She's 11. She can handle it.
You gotta arm them. I think a lot of our, you know, for not me, but a lot of people who intentionally move to some of these suburbs. I think it's, I know why, but I also think we need to examine some internalized anti-Blackness, see if that is playing a part in the decisions that you're making when it comes to where you live, where your kids go to school. And and I get wanting to have the best, but you got to think about what you're associating with the best. Because I would, all I'm gonna say is this: it's not safe.
It's not
these places. It's not safe for our children to be onlys, to be othered. It's not safe, and they will. There's no doubt about it. There's no if. They will experience discrimination. They will experience anti-Blackness, and they will experience it from children and from adults.
Yep.
And from teachers, from administrators, from parents of these kids. Yeah. So you got to weigh the cost. Yeah. Like Danielle said, at what cost? You got to weigh the cost there. And if the cost for you, if you're just like, no, I'm going to keep them here, then you need to be having these conversations very explicitly with them. About what they're going to experience. Absolutely. Because otherwise you're setting them up for some internalized anti-Blackness. Yep. For some heartbreak, for some self-esteem issues, for a lot of stuff. So you've got to be willing to say, okay, we moved here for this, that, and the other. And what that may mean for you is you will experience some discrimination based on your skin color. What does that look like? Give them the tools, the scripts, things that they can say to counter this stuff. Mm-hmm. Don't just send your babies out into the den of lions and then be like, what happened?
What happened?
Ooh. And then be surprised they're getting discriminated. Whenever I read that someone's surprised, I'm just like, my kid got discriminated against. Well, yeah, they're at a PWI.
Land. Like, this is the land of colonizers right now. Like, we have been, like, this land has been taken over. Of course, they're being discriminated against.
Yeah, right? Like, why is this surprise? You moved there,
colonized.
Right? So for I see a lot. Of. I have a multicultural following. For parents who are not Black, when we talk about biases and we talk about anti-racism, what, because we're, this is a unique Black experience that we're discussing right now. But I also, the whole point of this conference is to disrupt these systems of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot, you and me and everybody else, Danielle, we can't dismantle white supremacy. We can't.
Mm-hmm.
The white parents who are watching this, that's your responsibility to
Right.
dismantle the systems and divest from these systems that continue to perpetuate white supremacy,
Mm-hmm.
and to investigate how you gatekeep for it every single day and how you
Mm-hmm.
invest in it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So for the white parents watching this, what advice can you give as far as like checking your biases in the way that they can start talking to their kids about anti-racism?
I think being honest with your kids about how you grew up and the biases that you learned and how they were harmful. I think that this idea, a lot of the times we talk to kids like we're talking at them or we're talking down to them or we're not relating to them. But I think one of the best strengths that you have is to say, you know what, I grew up like this. I held these biases. I still hold them. I'm still a harmful person and I'm working on it. Right? Because your kids, you have to model to them sort of humanity and imperfection so that they don't feel like having harmful thoughts or doing harmful things is so wrong that they're going to pretend that they never do it at all.
Yeah.
Right, there's got to be some accountability with that, but white parents have to model that accountability.
And
You
to
have to
model it, you
model
have
that.
to actually embody it. You
Yeah,
can't model something you don't
yeah,
embody yourself.
you
So
have
are
to.
you an anti-racist?
Exactly. You have to model that accountability. A lot of us as parents, we want our kids to be courageous. We want our kids to stand up to the bullies at school, and we don't stand up to the bullies in our lives.
We don't stand up to the colonizers in our heads.
We don't stand up to the bullies in our families.
Yeah.
We don't stand up to the bullies in ourselves, right? So I think that is my biggest advice to white parents is just like starting the conversation as, look, I'm on this journey with you to become more anti-racist, to break down the oppression and to divest from these systems because they harm us. And white parents, I could do this, like I'm not going to do it all, but there are 1,000 ways that white supremacy negatively impacts white people. Like
Oh my God.
You're
White
overwhelmingly
supremacy
impacted.
dehumanizes everyone it touches, period.
It
Stop.
touches everybody. Fat phobia comes from it. The experience that fat kids and fat white kids get bullied and picked on too, that is white supremacy manifesting itself
Yeah.
in fat phobia, right? And fat kids are some of the kids who get picked on the most in school across
Yep.
all dynamics. And your investment in white supremacy is keeping all of these kids being harmed. All of them.
All of them, including
There's
yours.
so many ways. The lack of accountability, one thing like one way that white supremacy sort of stops, it hurts all of us is the lack of accountability. White supremacy is punitive, right? It's been so punitive. It's been punitive in just ridiculous ways, lynchings and castrations and eating our ancestors. I mean, just
Yeah.
astronomically punitive.
Black folks got eaten.
Yes, right?
Thrown into sugar cane vats.
Seriously,
Alive.
like literally eat
Disgusting stuff.
our ancestors. That kind of punitiveness is passed down, right? They've watched that. Their grandparents were at these lynchings and they were eating other people. Their parents knew of these stories and they're so punitive. Their culture is so punitive that that's why they shut responsibility and accountability. Because you know this with gentle parenting and conscious parenting, when the consequences are not so severe, then you get your kids to be honest, then you get your kids to be accountable, then you can have honest conversations and you can work towards solutions, right? But if they're terrified of the consequences that come with being honest, with being accountable, with sharing hard things, then guess what? they're not going to do it.
I can do it.
They're going to lie. They're going to avoid it. They're going to pretend that it's not happening. And that is white culture, right? On a systemic level. Look at how they deny. They don't even want us. They don't even want to teach the history at all, because they feel, right? They understand what punitiveness is, and they think that everyone is going to respond the way that they have responded. So white parents have a real huge obstacle in modeling accountability because it's not cultural for them. Their presidents haven't done it. Their mayors haven't done it. Their families haven't done it. Yeah. So that is a huge thing that white parents can do, is model accountability and say, we have been part of this system that is harming people, and we have to do better. And then you get kids who say, okay, we can do it, right? Instead of this denial of like, no, those were all those other white people, not my so-and-so. White people love to point to their one strange ancestor that maybe did something, and then they got 1,000 other ones. Yeah. And they don't want to associate with them. And I'm happy. Associate with that one ancestor. Associate with your John Brown and your family. That's wonderful. And take accountability for these other kidnappers and enslavers. You have to be both. There's an and makes things better for us. It's not or. Yeah.
It's not or. And well, either or thinking is part of white culture.
Binary.
Yeah, that binary, that either or thinking. It does cut you off at the knees, because all you are doing, like you said, is shucking responsibility. Mm-hmm. Of saying like, no, that's somebody else's. No, we're the good ones, and we march and everything else, but it goes beyond that. It is action based. Yep. Being, and I hate to use the word ally. What I want is for y'all to move towards becoming an accomplice. Mm-hmm. Not allies, awesome, that's a good start. But when you are an accomplice, you are actively divesting from these toxic systems every single day.
Yeah.
And you're figuring and you're learning every single day, because trust me, I have to divest from systems too.
Yeah.
White supremacy is everywhere. It is the water.
It's the air that we breathe.
It is the air that we breathe. So I'm constantly having to like check myself, like, okay, you really want to divest? Maybe you should, cut off your Amazon account.
Right.
Like all these different little ways.
I know. And Amazon is big for people. Listen, like, and trying to be intentional, right? Trying to be intentional. Because if we believe that our small actions don't make a difference, then we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So we have to believe that our actions, that our intentions, that our small actions make a difference. And they do, y'all. Like, you have to sort of think about it, even if it's just like, when I supported this small business, they were able, you have to really have imagination as in anti-oppression work, and let your imagination really go wild for you, so that you can really believe in what you're doing. And when you invest in this small business, instead of like, oh, I took 2 extra weeks to get it from this small bookstore, or it took me a month to get this thing. What you did was, I put food on somebody's table. I put like art in some kid's hand. I put books in somebody's hand, because they were able to use that money to do something. And those small things change people's lives, right? They change people's lives. So we have to really believe in being intentional about divesting in these systems, about being intentional about investing in our
new
own systems.
Yeah. So that's the biggest part, is I want us, part of this conference and beyond, to be solution minded, to start thinking, okay, it's really hard to conceptualize, what will this world look like without capitalism? Mm-hmm. What would it look like without anti-Blackness, without white supremacy? What would it look like? What would it feel like? So that's what keeps me going, because I do not believe that the end of these things will happen in my lifetime, or even my daughter's lifetime. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop being hopeful and looking towards the future, because every time I think about it, I just ask myself that question: what will this world look like if without white supremacy, without anti-Blackness, without capitalism, without patriarchy? What does that feel like?
What does it look like?
What does it feel like? How do people function? You know, and that imagining, like she says, being willing to like wildly imagine that is what keeps me going, because all I can see is just my, if I have grandchildren, because I don't know, Gia, she may be like, I don't want them kids,
Listen.
but you know, but just imagining the people who come after me just being liberated, being free,
Yes.
being able to have ease, have rest, not have to toil, not have to constantly choose a profession because it makes them money, but they hate it. Like
Right.
all these things. I want restoration and
Yes.
relaxation and
Yes.
rest. I don't want to,
And
that's what keeps me going.
and I always connect that to our ancestors. I think
Yeah.
about Black people and being enslaved in this country. There were plenty of our ancestors who never ever thought that enslavement would end.
They never,
Never.
I mean, 'cause, well, how
They
could they?
never
They were
they
enslaved, their
never ever
children are
thought it.
enslaved. Yeah. And here we
For
are.
hundreds and hundreds of years, to see generation after generation. But there were always people who believed that it would and believed that it could and fought for it.
And fought for it.
And they fought for it and they fought for it and they fought for it and they made it happen. And even indigenous people, right? Kids getting taken away and just getting shipped off to schools. And now, I mean, to see these statues fall, some of their ancestors never envisioned that,
Yeah.
right? They never envisioned their kids coming back to their language or being able to do their dances without persecution. Our ancestors had this in their mind, and these are the things that we have to have in our mind too. So I love that, right? Like keep looking for it. I'm an imaginative person. I'm an imaginative person, and I believe in things that I cannot see, right?
Oh yeah.
Like
I'm a
Solange
futuristic
said, I
person.
saw things that I imagined.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
And that is going to keep this resistance going, and that is going to carry our children over. There are always going to be believers who see things that are impossible. There were always people who saw, there were people who saw gay people get married openly. There are people who saw it in their mind when it was illegal to just be living and gay, right? There are people who saw it, because these are the old ways, right? This stuff isn't new. We are returning back to the freedoms that we had when we were autonomous, right? We are still connected. We still have that in our DNA, that belief that we lived liberated before. We lived without police before. We lived all these things before. We can return to that.
Yeah. That's why I keep calling this journey that I'm on a return to myself.
Yes.
And like my friend Danny Faust said, she was like, as I heal, my ancestors heal.
Yes.
My mother heals. You know, my sisters heal, because healing is not just a forward thing. I'm not just healing myself and my daughter. You know, time is all around us. We heal forwards, backwards, to the side. Like we got that. As I start to learn, because I'm not there yet 100%, how to stop thinking in these binaries, I'm realizing that a lot of these constructs, including time, keeps us stuck. So it really helps me to think. Like even this morning I sat here, and I'm trying to get into the habit of meditating in the mornings after I drop Gia off, because I just got to get out of my head, get that monkey chatter to stop. So I sat here, and the last image I remember before I opened my eyes was an ancestor putting their head to my head and just saying thank you.
Wow.
You know, and I don't even know, I didn't think, like, it wasn't me. It just came to me, and that's what keeps me going. Just knowing that as I heal, my ancestors heal, my mother heals, my sisters heal, my daughter she doesn't need healing, but my healing helps her so she doesn't need healing. And that's what keeps me going, and just really envisioning this world without all these toxic systems. We have to be willing to do that, but as we form solutions, we have to understand the systems. We have to understand the point of the systems. We have to understand how the systems work. Absolutely. So that is the whole point. That's why Janelle is doing this workshop, you know, for the conference. That's why I'm having the conference, because it's called a collective reimagining on purpose. Because in order for us to divest from them, we have to even know where where we're divesting from, and
We
then be
do.
able to look toward the future.
Right, we do. We have to be aware of how these systems work and how they harm us and how they harm our children. And what we model to when we model healing is modeling that for our kids, right?
Yeah.
Because life is going to happen to them and harm is going to come to them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And when we model healing, right, we model to them that they can do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We show them, like, look, it may not be perfect, it may be rocky, and you can heal.
You can do it
Watch
too.
me, watch me, watch me, right?
Right.
And I tell my kids that. I'm very explicit in conversations about the bias that I had against children, right? Then we were talking about parental bias and how I was talked to. And I tell them, I'm like, when I said that to you, that was a struggle for me. I had to really think about it. I had to take a second because I was really mad. Yeah. Like, my daughter was complaining the other day. We just moved, and like, she's like, I want to go to Disneyland. My friends are doing this, and we took them on a trip and all this stuff. And she's just like, but that wasn't that fun, and I still don't like this. And I'm over here like, oh, okay. We complaining a lot right now. Okay.
So that person in your head is like, this child is ungrateful. She don't appreciate nothing.
Yes. That person came out, right? And so I was able to sort of center myself and go back to the tools that I learned in brain and child development, and go back to the ways that our ancestors treated children with love and with stories. And I just made it a joke. I was like, dang, your parents don't do nothing for you, huh? Like,
Right.
I was like, I know I'm trash out here. And like, I know that I cannot give you the world. But I'm working on it. Like, I'm trying the best that I can. I can't do everything. And she's kind of like, you know what? I'm tripping a little bit. When I sort of made it funny to her, she started smiling, and I knew she got the lesson. Right?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I was able to tell her, I said, there was a big part of me who wanted to yell at you and be like, you are so ungrateful. Da, 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 da. But I was like, but what does shame do for you? Right? What does me shaming you? You feel a little embarrassed now when I kind of busted you out a little bit. You feel a little embarrassed, but that's your own thing that you can do. That's not something I had to project on you. That's your own internal work that you said, oh, that is a little shameful. I am tripping. I don't have to do that for you. You can do that for yourself. But I said, but that's not the way I grew up, and I worked hard at that. And she was like, oh, okay. And I was able to sort of put the whole story together for her, because I think it's important for our kids to see that we struggle.
Yeah.
And we work towards things.
And especially for people who are transitioning to this type of parenting. Because trust me, the stuff that's set up in this world, the way that the world is set up, it is not set up for us to have healthy families.
No.
It is not set up for us to be good, conscious, intentional parents. All of these things that is going on with capitalism, with us having to stay busy and work and make money and, not have a bunch of help, not have a village anymore. All of these things work against us. And it makes it very, very difficult for us to be conscious parents, because we got all this outside stuff, and we got our stuff from our parents.
Yes.
And we got our stuff from our childhood. So understanding that you were not set up for success to be this type of parent, period. But as you do this work, it is like a muscle. It does get a little bit easier.
It does.
But I think having a conversation with your child, if you used to hit them, if you used to be that type of parent, you have to let them know,
yes,
hey, I know what I did to you before, the way that I used to parent you, it was wrong. I should never have put my hands on you.
Right.
I am trying not to yell anymore. I promise to not ever hit you again. Because if you say it, you're holding yourself accountable.
And they hold
There's no middle ground here.
Yeah, they hold you.
There's no middle ground here. You got to be willing to make that commitment. Okay, I will never hit you again. I'm trying my best, to be respectful of you. Please be patient with me as I, start this new way of parenting you. I understand you're a child. You will still make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. Let's work together. So we are living in a respectful environment. And you're able to let me know when I make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm giving you permission to hold me accountable because I want to be the best parent that I can to you. And I'm so sorry for the type of parent that I was before. You did not deserve
Absolutely.
that. How
Yeah.
many of us, like, how would that have changed your life if your parent told you that? Because it's okay. Like, all of us are not parenting from the womb as conscious parents. You know
We're
what I'm
not.
saying? A lot of us are transitioning to this way of parenting. And if you have older kids, you may be like, oh, it's too late. It's never
It's
too
not
late.
too late.
Imagine if you would have heard that, even if you're 11, 12, 17, 21,
Yeah.
if your parent just was just like,
I
what I
messed
did was
up.
wrong. I messed up. I'm going to try to do better. You have my permission to hold me accountable. I will never hurt you like that again.
Oh man.
Come on now.
That is a bomb. That is a solve right there. That could heal a lot of wounds for a lot of us. And that super transfers over into like raising anti-racist kids. If you tell your kids that you're working on your bias and your racism and your anti-blackness, guess what? They'll see it and they'll be like,
Yeah.
Mom, when you did this, or I saw this, or you said that we were
I
going to
heard
support
this.
Black businesses and we haven't, they will call you out. So you can use your kids as we're partners with them. We are partners with our children, and they are our teammates in this
Yeah.
journey of anti-oppression work. So partner with them. Partner
Right.
with them. We hold each other accountable, right? We're so used to holding our kids accountable, but we need them to hold us accountable as well.
Yeah. And just to be honest, have these conversations. It's, I feel
Absolutely.
like a lot of us are so embarrassed and we feel a lot of shame and guilt. But if you would just have this conversation, a lot of that will be lifted off of you,
Yes.
and allow your children to like start coming to you with stuff. You're still gonna make mistakes.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
part of humanity. But
Yes.
but now they're seeing you as a human being and not just like this person over them.
Yes.
You're starting to sort of dissolve those that anti not anti that what is it called, childism,
Yes.
uh, dissolve adult supremacy and starting to model and show your child the respect they deserve. So be willing to have these conversations. They're difficult, but just like none of these conversations are easy. Race, bias,
They're
white
not.
supremacy, none of them are easy. That's if they were, everybody be doing it, y'all. Come on now.
Right.
Let's just start. Got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
If you got a VIP or All Access Pass ticket, Janelle is gonna. I mean, this was an amazing conversation. So
I
just
got
imagine
one
what
for
her
you.
workshop is gonna sound like. So I hope you
Yeah.
got a ticket.
Yeah, please get a ticket to the workshop. I'm really excited. We just wanted to come on here and talk to different parents, Black, brown parents, white caretakers,
Yes.
so that to really encourage y'all to take these steps forward and really invest in this kind of education. Y'all, we have all invested in white institutions. We've invested in white literature. We've
Yeah.
we've invested in that stuff. And I'm not saying that some of it hasn't been beneficial for us, but we need to invest in our own communities so that we can dismantle this oppression in our homes, in our communities, in our children, right, in ourselves, and investing and taking time with each other and being in community. Some of just going to the conference, you're going to find people who are going to speak to different needs that you have. And I found that the last time with like Farrah the Free Child, when she had her teenage daughter on there with
Yeah.
her, I said,
Keela.
oh my God,
You know.
this is who I need to be around. I have people talk so negatively about their relationships with teens, and seeing her and her relationship with her daughter
It was
gave
beautiful.
me the hope that I needed, right? It helped me with my imagination. And so I'm firmer that I'm gonna get through these teen years and they're gonna be close. Me and my daughters are gonna be closer because of it. I'm not scared about my daughter turning 13 or 14 anymore. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. And these are the things that you get when you invest yourself in these conferences, in this time, in this space. So yes, get your ticket, y'all. Come out.
Sunday is Sunday, June 20th, which is my birthday, by the way.
Oh my
I
gosh!
know. 41. Who knew?
That's so exciting.
1:15, Raising Anti-Racist Kids with Janelle Scales, 1:15 Central, so 2:15 Eastern. And what is that?
No, I'm
11:15.
earlier than that, right? I'm
No, ma'am.
11:30. No?
That's you're 1:15, and that's Pacific.
11:15
Yes.
my time.
Yes. I can't stand you.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you
Let
sure?
me
Because
send
I
you the
feel like it's
let me send you the
11:30 on
calendar
the flyer.
invite. No, ma'am.
Oh no. Am
Well,
I just look at
let
it
me
again?
look.
Because I feel like I posted it today and I saw 11:30 Central Time.
Okay, let me
Okay.
see. We got to get our stuff together.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure that it's right either way.
Okay.
Maybe it's wrong on the website, and get it anyway. It's on Sunday, so get
It's
your
on
ticket.
Sunday in the morning for Pacific time, people. It's on Sunday in the morning. A lot of my folks missed it last time, but look on your Instagram in the morning. I'm gonna try to post something. I'm gonna do better. Okay, I'm gonna do better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post something Saturday night.
And if you can't make it, you can still get a ticket because it will be recorded,
Get the
and
recording.
you will get an MP3 and you'll get a video recording, so you can listen to go if you want to.
So get it together, y'all.
We appreciate y'all for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. And
I would say if you have questions,
something.
yeah, if you have questions, save them for the conference. Go ahead and get that ticket, man. Some there. But this is such a good, a really like life-changing type of conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, Janelle. As always, you're amazing, and thank y'all for joining us too.
All right.
See y'all still, and I will put this on IGTV so y'all can watch it back and on Facebook.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, y'all. Bye.